What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to this episode of Brickcast Desktop Builds, and today we are doing another Battlebots mock showcase. This time, one of the most famous bots in the show, that is Witch Doctor, with this beautiful purple and green color scheme and the awesome kind of voodoo theme that this robot has going on. This one has been in every season of the reboot, and it's gone through some different iterations, and now we can bring it into another iteration, the Lego form. Now this robot took me a little bit of planning. I really wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do with the wheels. Now the actual Witch Doctor has wheels that are much smaller than these, but I really wanted to give it tires. I've experimented with just using sort of the naked wheel or wheel piece without a tire, because that would have been a little more accurate, but it also would have given me a lot less space to work with as far as depth and being able to build some more of Witch Doctor's body. So I decided to go with the bigger wheels, but because I decided to do that, since Witch Doctor is a smaller robot in general, I had to really make some compromises with how small the body of Witch Doctor is. If I don't drop it, you can see this bot is actually built only on a 3x6 base. So it's a really small base, but the wheels and this top part with the decorative bone self-righting mechanism kind of make this bot look a little bigger than the actual structure is at its base. So one of the most daunting aspects of approaching doing a miniature mock for this build was actually replicating the self-righting mechanism, which on the real Witch Doctor is sort of this decorative, almost rib cage structure, and that was going to be really hard to replicate on this scale. And so as I take this self-righting mechanism off, I'm just going to show you guys a little bit about how this goes together and my thought process for putting this part together at this tiny of a scale. So this is what the ribcage self-righting element looks like when it's disassembled. As you can see, it's really pretty much just a combination of some sloped tiles as well as modified tiles with the single stud in the center. So first off, I needed to get it to clear the weapon so the weapon could spin, and the way that I managed to accomplish that was taking one of these sloped tiles and using one of these center studded tiles just to place it right there, and that, when you combine it with the identical one on the side, leaves some space in between for the weapon to spin, and it kind of looks like the edge of the rib cage the way that it juts out like that. Now I kind of cheated a little bit with this, where I just tilted these over to the side a tad. You can't really see it right now, but now that I put it together, that gives it a little more clearance, and it also looks a tad more like a bone structure where everything's not so straight and squarish. So to attach these to the rest of the build, we'll just set those down and pick up this part, which is the sort of center of the rib cage. Now, if you want to do some custom Sharpie work, you could maybe draw in some of the empty space on the rib cage, but I like to leave my bricks unmodified, so I keep it just like this, which looks like the outside of a rib cage and is close enough to accomplishing that shape in the scale. Now I needed to mount this to the other two parts with something that wasn't too large, so I couldn't actually use a full plate because that would create way too much clearance between the rest of Witch Doctor's body. So I went and took one of these rounded, smooth pieces that's designed to go on the underside of a lot of builds. These are super useful, I have found, for building in this scale, for building with Battlebots. And what you're going to do is we mount this right here to this bar piece, just like that. And then each of these is going to go on either side, and we can see that rib cage shape starting to come to fruition. Now the nice thing about this is when we mount it back on the other side of our bot, this bar piece is going to clip right to this purple clip right there. We can straighten it out. Now we see the self-righting mechanism is open, but when we look at Witch Doctor, the actual ribcage self-righter does have an angled element to it. And when we fold this down all the way, You can see the way that curved underside piece works. It sits right at the perfect angle, and that was kind of an accidental discovery that ended up turning out super nicely with the build. And if we can just kind of position this right on here, we can get the weapon to spin nicely and clear the rest of the self-rider as well. The final really important piece to this awesome micro-scale Witch Doctor build was a fairly new piece for building wheeled vehicles, which is this 1x2 piece with an axle on the side. Now this piece is pretty special because it allowed me to create the clearance that I needed on the inside of Witch Doctor's body for the weapon. Now there is a similar piece which those old school Lego builders like myself remember, which is a 2x2 piece with an axle. The problem with this guy is this extra stuff right here, these extra studs, would have blocked the clearance that I actually need if you look at the rest of the build right here for the weapon. As you can see, I have the axle pieces right on that side. If by any chance I had used one of those other pieces, it would create a huge obstacle. So this piece was essential. And now we'll just mount it back onto the bot to show sort of the completed structure of it. We have one on each side in the back. That's how I was able to build on that 3 stud width that I used for this micro scale. And clip that other wheel on, and then this will fall directly on where those 2 tiles land, right in that space right there, which is just perfect. And if you want a closer look, you can see where I used the 2x1 wheel mount piece right up there, which gave enough clearance so that the weapon could actually spin and be useful. Weapons, as I've said before, most important part of Lego BattleBots. You always want to make sure your weapon is working. And when I clip it all together, you can see how those 2x1 wheel axle pieces were incredibly useful. So wrapping up this micro scale Witch Doctor build, I just want to say this one was a little more complicated than some of the other bots I've had to do. I really had to think about how I wanted to incorporate these larger wheels while keeping the scale accurate, and this rib cage self-righting mechanism was a real challenge. But as you can see, it is a functional self-righter just like Witch Doctor needs and added on, I believe, a couple seasons ago. So this robot is ready for battle, and honestly, I just love how it all came together with the green and purple color scheme that is so signature. I don't build in purple bricks a lot. I don't have a lot of them, so that was a nice, fun little change. And I think this one is overall not quite as challenging as the rotator build was, if you want to check that video out. But this build was one of the more challenging BattleBots mocks I've had to do, but I'm happy to add it to the collection. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, this has been Drew with BrickCast.